Okay, guys, I'm ready. Ask away.
You came from Brazil
Just now, yeah.
just now. Played yesterday.
Yesterday in Rio. And the night before in Sao Paulo.
You are playing. No sé si entiende. ¿Sí? No, por ahí. You are playing songs for the last record.
Mostly from the last record.
Blue CD.
But then we're doing some older blues tunes and some tribal tech stuff too. There's maybe a couple tunes in tribal tech.
And from Jimi Hendrix too. You play a cover.
Maybe for an encore, maybe. I don't know. Sometime. That was easy.
How did Brazilian audience receive your music?
Oh, it was great, man. We were really surprised. We had, I think, 700 people the first show, and like about 650 the second show, and yeah, really good. They were very happy. It was a good audience. So we were really happy about that because we haven't played in Brazil in 6 years. So we were really glad. It went really well.
Sí. You like playing here too.
Yeah.
You like the audience.
Yeah, we love the audience too. We've been trying to come back every year, but it's been so hard since the economy in Brazil and in Argentina. And you know, we had a couple times where we were going to be able to come because Colombia was offering a lot of money. And also Venezuela was offering a lot of money to make up for the difference. But they canceled at the last minute. Colombia canceled this year and almost made us have to. The only reason that the tour stayed is because Colombia was the first place.
The beginning in Colombia.
The beginning in Colombia, so we were able to move the tickets. But last year, Venezuela was right in the middle of the tour, and when they canceled, everything fell apart. So it's been really hard for us because we can't afford to, or I can't afford to come down to South America for only one country, because then I don't make enough to pay the musicians.
It's very expensive.
So it's really expensive, you know. So
only for just one country.
Yeah. So the only way I can come to South America is if I can put at least 3 countries together, and that's kind of difficult to do because, like in Europe, we just have one agent that books everywhere in Europe, and we don't have just one agent from South America. I have to call Roberto from, you know, and for Argentina, and he's living in Spain, and then I have to call, you know, Antonio Mario and Herbert, who's living in Brazil, and Jay, who's living in Ecuador. And it's hard to put it all together, you know. But so we've been trying every year. Finally, we made it. So happy.
But when you have to go to Japan, you go directly.
Yeah. Japan.
You don't have to make another country.
Well, actually, we try to hook Japan up with Australia when we try to, because it's good if you can do Australia and Japan at the same time. But you know, I'm not a businessman or a manager, and I always feel really proud, like when I do something and it actually happens, like this whole tour. You know, that it was basically just me in my room making millions of phone calls to Roberto and Antonio Mario and all these guys, and it finally happened, and I'm here. And I just can't believe it. Finally, it worked after trying every year for 4 years. So finally, we made it. Hopefully, we'll be able to do this every year, or at least every other year, I hope.
The last time you came to Argentina was 3 years ago, approximately.
Yeah,
about
3.5 years
and
ago, yeah.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
At the ending of the 2000.
Yeah.
And now you are making just one show, only a show you are going to make tomorrow on Saturday.
Well, we play 2 shows.
2 shows on one day.
2 shows in one day, yeah, because he had to move. He wanted to do 2 nights in Buenos Aires and then 1 night in Neuquén. How do you pronounce that? Neuquén, yeah. And then fly to Quito and play that night. But the guy in Quito said no, because he needs us for a day of press as well. So Roberto had
clinic today.
Tonight, yeah. Uh-huh.
Tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Viendo.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else with questions?
And you work with Joe Sullivan.
Yeah, I mean, that was a great gig. That was probably the most fun gig I've ever done as a sideman. I can imagine it would be the most fun gig for anybody because he's the best musician alive, I think, in my opinion. I don't think there's anybody better than him. So he's hard to work for because he's very, very demanding and he knows what he wants. And he'll tell you if he doesn't like what you're doing, you know. But I just have so much respect for him. He's the greatest musician. It's really an honor to work with him.
You played with him in the 80s.
Actually in the 90s. In the 90s, yeah. Yeah, great musician.
And what about tribal tech? You are playing?
We haven't really been doing much because, Gary Willis moved to Barcelona this year. And he married a nice Spanish girl and moved to Barcelona.
He definitely moved to Barcelona
Yeah.
to live there?
Yeah. And Willis is a strange guy in the way that he doesn't really like so much to be on tour. He only really will play if the money's really good, you know. And unfortunately, the only place where the money's like a lot is Europe. And for me, it's not enough just to play for 1 or 2 months in Europe a year. And if I do a record with the trio, we can work all over the world, you know, as much as a year as we can. If it's up to me, I'll be on the road for 6 months a year because I love being on the road and playing every night. But if I do a record with Tribal Tech, then there's no record with the trio. So I have to balance it, you know. And I do want to do another record with Tribal Tech because I miss playing with Willis and Scott because they're both great players. And so I'm sure maybe next year we'll do another album. And it's just harder with him living in Barcelona because we have to send CDs back and forth, FedEx CDs to Europe. It's a complicated procedure to make an album when one of your guys lives so far away. But I'm sure we'll probably do it anyway.
More money touring by Europe than the United States.
Europe, the United States is the worst for money. Yeah.
In the case of your music.
Oh yeah, nothing worse. Yeah. In fact, we haven't toured the States in 3 years. We just said, forget about it. It's not worth it. It's just I feel really bad because I have a lot of fans in the United States that want to see us play, but if I went out in the United States right now, I would lose money by touring. You know, because the money that they offer doesn't pay for the flights, the van rental, the hotels. You can't make any money. Nobody that plays jazz tours in the United States. Nobody. Schofield, Mike Stern, Holsworth, nobody. They don't do it at all. I think I was the only one that was stupid enough to do it for the last 10 years, you know, because I was out there touring the States every year with Tribal Tech and Schofield and all these other jazz guitar players. Their tour of the United States would be like L.A. and New York. That's it, you know. And I remember Mike Stern called me one night on the phone. He said, man, I noticed that you're touring the States every year. How do you do it? And then I told him, well, you know, this and this and this and this. And he went, oh, well, no wonder I don't do it. I'm not going to do that. It's a big sacrifice. You don't make any money. You have to stay in really terrible hotels, Motel 6, you know. It's where all the prostitutes are.
Like a starting from
like
the
on the, yeah, like,
every year.
Yeah,
Whole year.
you see Motel 6 on the Cops show all the time. That's where all the drug dealers stay when they get arrested. It's terrible in the United States. Nobody pays to teach it. Like a club owner in any city in the United States can make money from a local top 40 band or a wet T-shirt night, you know, more than he can make from a national jazz act. So the club owners just go, they just don't want to do it anymore.
You have to be in a city and play always in the same place.
Yeah, I mean, there's an exception. You know, New York and Los Angeles still have active jazz scenes. You you know, and you can make a living, you know, teaching, playing music in clubs in New York or L.A., but if you're traveling, you wouldn't be traveling. I don't know any jazz musicians that travel in the United States. They all go to Europe. And Europe is probably the only place that really pays like the kind of money that some pop and rock people make in the States. Like, you know, really good money for playing the kind of music that you like. And I think it's always been that way, even for the early blues players, you know, like Albert King and the people of that era, you know, they weren't making any money in the United States playing music, but yet the people in Europe were buying all their records and, you know, really getting into it. And it wasn't really until Led Zeppelin and Eric Clapton and Jeff Beck and all the English musicians copied that music and then brought it to the United States that it became popular. Because the black musicians that invented it never made any money, you know, playing this kind of music. So it's really interesting how America doesn't pay any attention to its artists in blues and jazz. You know, they seem to pay attention to their country artists and their pop artists, but for some reason the blues and jazz artists are pretty low on the list.
Same everywhere.
Yeah, it's difficult. Yeah, it's difficult because it's music more for musicians than for regular people. And in order to really get a taste for it, you have to be exposed to it more. And in order to be exposed to it, you have to maybe hear it on the radio. And you don't hear that music on the radio in the United States. You know, maybe the only radio stations that are playing like eclectic jazz and blues and stuff are maybe college radio stations. But you know, most of them have the distance of like over the cornfield, and then you can't hear the station anymore. You know, they don't have a range, right? So
Even in New York?
No, in New York it's different, you know, but that's just one city. You know, some of the bigger cities have good jazz radio, but mainstream America is not really. You know, whereas we go to Europe and we actually hear our music on the radio, and you just go, oh my God, that's so weird. Because it's just, I don't think, I can't remember them playing a song of mine on mainstream radio ever. You know, it's unheard of. Yeah, so it's always really amazing when we go to another country like Argentina or Italy or someplace, and you see all these amazing fans that have been listening to our records over the years. Because in Los Angeles, we're like nobody.
It doesn't happen
we're
there.
like nothing, huh?
It doesn't happen there. You don't find fans that have
Small groups of them. Like if I was to go into, like, say, Cincinnati to do a gig, I would expect maybe 40 people to be there.
Find more amount of fans in other countries.
Oh, way more. If I go to Sardinia in Italy, I can expect 500 people. It's a concert at least. If I go to Cincinnati, Ohio, maybe 30, if I'm lucky. You know, so it's a big difference. You know, in the United States, we're very unpopular. Yeah, but it's okay because we realize that it's not just us. It's all the musicians that play that. You know, and that's why you don't often see players that play this kind of music even bothering to tour the States, because it's just it's sort of a lost cause. There's just small pockets of people who enjoy listening to that in every city. And yeah, in fact, it was a really funny, embarrassing thing last time we actually played in Cincinnati, Ohio, because I don't know why they booked us in this club, a 750-seat club, 750 seats, and there was less than 50 people in the theater. Like 50 people looks great in a club like this. 750 style of music is similar, but it's in instrumentation, you know, it's all overdubbed, layered guitar, which I've never done a record like this before, and I thought it was really fun for me to experiment in the studio, because I finally have a studio at my house where I can really do something, you know, and on all the previous records, my parts were just, I've always played with keyboard players and horn players, and I just play one track and I'm done, you know. But on this record, I wanted to really, I guess, show off all my sounds, because I have a lot of different amps now and different pedals, and I wanted to just make a really textural guitar record, and it's my very first one, and I'm kind of proud of it just because I never done it in my life, and I was really new at the experience of layering. I've never done that before. And Jimmy Page did it a lot with Led Zeppelin. Michael Landau has done it a lot on his records, and there's an art to it that I knew nothing about, and I learned so much from doing it. I made a lot of mistakes, but I learned a lot.
But you did something similar in the last CD of Tribal Tech. You record the parts of the guitar in your house, and
Yeah.
with the drum.
Yeah, sure. It just wasn't a lot of different tracks of guitar. It was just basically one or maybe at the most two guitar tracks. On this last record, God, there's like 8, 9 tracks of guitar going on at the same time. It's really dense as far as that. It was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun doing that. Anybody else? Otherwise, I'll go up and eat my food.
What do you think of Jeff Beck?
He's my favorite. I think he's the best guitar player in the world.
I'd like to hear that.
I think he's the best. I mean, I don't honestly, I don't want to say anything bad about anybody, but I'm going to anyway. But I don't understand for the life of me how all these 60s guitar players who I worshiped when I was a kid never got any better. In fact, usually got worse, you know. And Jeff Beck is the only guitar player from that era of guitar players who was great then and is even greater now, you know.
Great,
and
very much great.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's improved, and I think he continues to improve, and I think now, I think he's just the best in the world, you know. So just about any rock guitar player who knows anything about guitar, if you ask him who his favorite guitar player is, he's going to say Jeff Beck. You know,
Most than Stevie Ray Vaughan.
in my opinion, way, yeah, with no comparison. I mean, I don't see Stevie Ray Vaughan as any kind of innovator. I see Stevie Ray Vaughan as a guy who listened to Jimi Hendrix and Albert King, and basically copied a lot of the stuff that they played. Jeff Beck, I think, is a real innovator, one of the only innovators of our century on guitar besides Jimi Hendrix. You know, original, really original. Though, you know, if you heard a Les Paul album, you might not say that, because if you hear a Les Paul album, you'll hear where Jeff got a lot of his stuff. It's not that he's not influenced by anybody, because he's very influenced by Les Paul, but he did so much. It's sort of like comparing Michael Brecker and John Coltrane, because if you listen to John Coltrane and then you listen to Michael Brecker, you'll hear a lot of John Coltrane and Michael Brecker, but then he developed so much more vocabulary on top of that, you know. So Jeff Beck tried to do the same thing with Les Paul. He listened to Les Paul, and then he kind of got his basic thing from that, and then he developed so much more stuff. Yeah, what a great musician. He blew me away the last time I saw him. I saw him at the amphitheater in Los Angeles, and I was just mesmerized. It was some of the best guitar playing I've ever seen in my life, and he never played one fast note, never, you know. And there's only a few players I know, like Toots Thielman, Joe Zawinul, Wayne Shorter, and Jeff Beck. And those are the only 4 musicians I know that can play a whole night of music without ever playing fast and still just wow the audience, you know, by just sheer melodic inventiveness, you know, sheer melody all night long without ever repeating themselves. You know, that's the thing I respect the most about musicians in general. And you know, I usually play fast because I can't think of anything good to play. So, sometimes I play fast because it's like, oh shit, I don't know what to do next. You know?
You like him like most than a musician than a guitar player. You like
Yeah.
like a musician.
I mean, I respect guitar players that have a lot of chops because I believe that I respect the dedication and the practice that it takes to be able to execute a lot of the stuff like Yngwie Malmsteen and Eddie Van Halen. And, you know, these are great guitar players that play a lot of notes, you know, and I really respect them because they're very good players. But that's not the stuff that moves me as much, is when I hear a guy like Jeff Beck play with such great tone and feel, and you know, or even the blues players of the past like Albert King, when they play those notes at exactly the right time and exactly the right place and exactly the right notes. That's what moves me more. Yeah, you know, yeah. I just know from being a teacher most of my life, it's way harder to play good when you're playing slow than it is when you're playing fast. Way more difficult. You know, just about anybody can play fast, but when you're playing slow and really concentrating on phrasing, that's the most difficult thing to do in music, and you can really tell a mature player by how he plays when he's playing very slowly. You know, that's what sort of separates the men from the boys. Most of the boys play fast, but most of the men are able to really play slow and with a lot of feeling. Jody Orio's great. You know, he's a great teacher, and he's a great technician. You know, and he's an amazing chord melody player. Not my favorite phraser melodically, but amazing. I don't think there's many guys except for maybe Ted Green and Phil DeGrye who have his sense of musicianship when he's playing alone. You know, I mean, that's something I can't do at all. So I really like, to me, those guys that can do that are in another world. Like Louis Salinas is another guy. You know, he can sit there and play the guitar all by himself. I've never done that in my life. You know, I need a bass player and a drummer. But, you know, I really respect these guitar players and have so much respect for these guys who can just sit there and play all by themselves because that's what they've practiced on doing. And Jody Orio, there's not too many guys that do it better than him. Mick Goodrick is another guy who can sit there and... Yeah, Mick Goodrick is another amazing chord melody style player who doesn't need anybody. He's an orchestra all by himself. You know, so I really have a lot of respect for those guys, even though it's not my style and I can't do it. I wish I could. I mean, I wish I could do just about everything that I can't do. I always see some guy play and I go, oh shit, he does a bunch of stuff that I can't do. I think a lot of guitar players feel that way.
Do you know guitarists from this country?
Mainly Louis Salinas. Yeah, you know, we're friends from a long time. I think he's amazing, great player.
Fusion jazz players.
I don't know so much. You know, a lot of the times when we come to other countries, we don't really get to hear. I mean, we don't have a night off where we can go hear people very often. People give me their CDs sometimes, but the only one that's ever given me a CD that really stuck out was Louis, because he's very special, I think. He's amazing.
What's the thing about Clapton?
He was never one of my favorite guitarists. I don't know. I was listening more to Hendrix, and he's a little bit too clean for my taste. You know, I like to hear more energy and more desperation. You know what I mean? He's a little bit safe for me. You know, I like to hear somebody go out on the edge a little bit more and take more chances and be a little bit more inventive. You know, there's a lot of great blues players like Robin Ford, Larry Carlton, Eric Clapton, Michael Bloomfield. All these guys are good musicians, but I don't listen to them so much because they're just too safe for me. You know, everything is perfect and just right, and every little note is in its right place. And you know, I'd rather hear Albert King just like, you know, bend the note too far, or you know what I mean, or you know, the string slips off of his finger and makes horrible noises and stuff. You know, because you feel like he's just going for it. You know, and he might fuck up and make a mistake, but when he does, that even sounds good too. You know, so those are the kind couldn't do. You know, I play the same way. I make so many mistakes on stage. I make so many bad mistakes and sounds, but I go for it. You know what I mean? It's like I'm on the edge all the time. I'm always trying something I've never done before, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it's really pathetically horrible. but you know, it's the spirit that counts. You know, you gotta go for it. You gotta push the envelope when you play.
Probably the audience doesn't notice your mistake.
I think maybe they do. I make some pretty bad ones. Some are pretty obvious, I think, but it's okay, you know, because I believe in just pushing. I know, like when you're on tour and you're playing the same music every night, if you really, like, I have a lot of like blueprints for solos that are the same, you know, because I know they work, and I might work around that blueprint. But if you start getting it to the point where your solos are kind of the same every night, it starts to feel like you're playing in like a top 40 band or a classical orchestra or something. The spirit of improvisation, it's gone. You've kind of composed it away, you know. So especially if someone has, like, in Europe, we have a sound man, Jack, who's one of my best friends, and he's also a really good keyboard player. And this poor guy has to hear me play night after night after night, right? And he's a good musician, right? So most of the time, I'm thinking not so much about the audience, but I'm thinking about him. I gotta do something different every night, or this guy's gonna think I'm an idiot.
It's better to work in a factory.
Yeah.
It makes
So-
sense than to work
Yeah,
in a factory.
yeah. So I'm really just trying to play different stuff every night, so this poor guy's ears don't get so sick of hearing me. You know, and I think it's good to think that way, because then it makes you have to constantly try to invent things to do, and it makes you think harder and maybe but be a better musician, even though you might make more mistakes. It makes you try to be more creative every night, and to me that's the point, I guess. Though you know, I'm not going to say I don't have some composed things, because I have some composed things that I do the same every night. In fact, I would say that our music is probably 50-50. You know, maybe 50% composition and worked out things and 50% improvisation. Sometimes I feel like with Tribal Tech we were trying to improvise too much sometimes, because the audience sometimes didn't even recognize the song we were playing. And I think the audience, they want to hear something familiar when they come to see you play. They don't mind if it's changing and different, but they want to hear some points of reference from the records, you know. And so we try to just have a balance of, you know, we try to make a good show for the audience, but we also try to make ourselves happy by being creative. And I've been in a lot of bands where it's way too much on the composed side. Like with Chick Corea, with Jean-Luc Ponty, the music is really structured, and it differs very little from night to night, you know, and that gets a little bit old, you know, for me, because you have a great show, amazing show for the audience, but it's the same show every night.
For the musician.
It gets a little bit frustrating when you feel like that you can't do anything on the spot that you're thinking about, because you're so busy playing parts all the time. It's like being in a violinist in an orchestra. You don't have time to breathe because here comes some more notes to play, right? So one of my mistakes as a composer in my early career was writing too many notes and confining the band and making them feel like they're just extensions of myself, you know, because they're writing too much for me to play. Because the more composed it is, the less it's going to change from night to night. So it made me realize the value of writing simpler songs, and that you can interpret those songs in different ways every night and make it more interesting for the musician. Like now in Tribal Tech, there's 3 or 4 songs in the Tribal Tech repertoire that we can play. They're so simple that we can play it as a swing tune one night, we can play it as a funk the other night, we can play it as a bossa nova one night, we can play it as a rock the other night, and depending on what feel you play the song in, the whole concept of the song changes from night to night. It's like playing that song, but it's a different song every night. And that's fun. That's how I really have a good time, just interpreting simple songs in different ways. It's a lot more fun for the musician.
What are your plans for Tribal Tech in the future?
Well, we're going to try to do something next year. I was just saying, Gary Willis moved to Barcelona. He got a young Spanish wife, very beautiful. So no one's blaming him for moving away. He did the right thing. But we'll see what happens. But we hope to do something next year. Actually, we have a gig in October in Russia, in Moscow, with Tribal Tech, just for 3 nights in Moscow in October. So that should be fun.
Are you married? So?
Yeah.
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 The wife miss you, I suppose.
No, probably not.
She's used to.
Yeah. I think she's glad when I go away, actually.
And Vital Tectons,
Vital Tectones it's kind of a hard band to put together because Victor is unbelievably busy. Like, I've never seen anybody that goes on the road as much as him. I saw his schedule one time. I think they basically came home for Christmas, and that was it. And the rest of the time he's on the road with either Bella Fleck or his band with his brothers, or, man, he is busy.
he's married too.
I think so. I think he's on his second wife now, actually. But it's hard to find a time where and Steve is really busy too. I'm the least busy of the 3. I wish my career was as good as those guys. Steve and Victor are always working, and so it's hard to find a time when the 3 of us are free at the same time. But we do want to do another one. We really enjoyed working together. So it's a little difficult for me to listen to those records because some of the writing is just not very good because I was pressured to come up with music. I mean, we have those. We call those records boot camp. You know what boot camp is? It's in the Army where you have those 10 days in the Army where you have to learn how to be a soldier in 10 days. And we call them those boot camp records because we go into the studio with nothing, no music, and then in 10 days we have to write 8 or 9 songs and record them in 10 days. And the pressure is unbelievable because as a composer, I sit home sometimes and try to compose music, and I go for weeks without thinking of an idea before I finally come up with something that's good enough. So you can imagine someone like me having to sit down there and write music, and these guys are telling me, oh, that's good enough, that's fine, let's use that. And I'm going, oh, that sucks. You know what I mean? And they're going, oh, no, it's fine, let's do it, that's fine, okay, good enough. Because they're really wanting to play. They don't want to sit there while I'm thinking of chords. They want to play, So I could write anything down there, and they'll go, oh, that's great, man, let's do, And I'm just saying, no, give me 5 more minutes, give me 10 more minutes, and I'm sitting there with my guitar trying to think of chords. It's horrible, Like, and when I listen to that music, I go, what the fuck was I thinking? Fucking horrible shit, It's really, a bad situation for a writer. For a player, it's fine, the playing's okay, but the writing part is bad because, those guys just come in with grooves. Okay, Steve goes, okay, we're going to play a song, and here's the groove. And I'm done. Okay, your turn. And I'm like, okay, I had to come up with the melody and the chords. That's a little harder, isn't it? Whatever, but I love those guys. They're great. I think sometimes they don't understand how difficult it is knowing the thousands and millions of songs out there, how hard it is to sit down and write something that doesn't sound like something that's come before, which is nearly impossible. And that's always, every time I sit down and write, as soon as I write 2 chords, I go, oh shit, that sounds like this song, or this sounds like that song. It's so hard. The older I get, the harder it is to write. Now I have all these songs out there. Sometimes every time I write 2 notes, it sounds like something that I wrote, like I'm writing the same song 100 times. It's very difficult, really hard. I should give up writing. Sometimes I think I'm out of it.
It seems to be like mother compose.
I think it's the hardest thing in the world, because there's just too much music out there. in this time. And I don't want to say anything bad about my favorite musician, Wayne Shorter, because I think Wayne Shorter is one of my favorite composers in the world. But his last couple of albums are so dense harmonically. The chords are changing so fast, and the melodies are so obscure that it makes me think the only way he can come up with music now is to make it so complex that no one could have possibly done it before. It's like to try to hear a good, simple song that no one has wrote before. I think Paul McCartney pretty much closed the book on that. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's really, really hard to write a simple, great melody and great set of chord changes that someone hasn't already done. It's so difficult, right? So I feel like that there's maybe 2 or 3 tunes on my new album that I'm really proud of because I was able to come up with some simple melodies and some simple chords that sound fresh to my ears, And I'm lucky if I feel like if there's just 2 songs on a record that I really feel that way about, I feel like I'm doing okay. But as I go on, man, I realize how hard it is. And I don't want to go to that place where Wayne Shorter is now, where I feel like I have to write 40 chords per measure in order to achieve freshness. I don't want to do that because I think it alienates people. I really enjoy music that when I think you can grow to like anything. Like I'm sure if I heard Wayne Shorter's record and I really listened to it over and over and over, I'm sure I could really learn to enjoy it, But I'm more like a first listen guy. I want to really love it on the first listen. Like when I heard his album Atlantis, that Wayne Shorter album Atlantis, it's a beautiful album, man. It's like from about 10 or maybe 15 years ago. It was the first album that Wayne did after Weather Report broke up. And I remember when I first heard that album, I just went, oh my God, man, what an amazing piece of music, and his later records don't hit me like that, and maybe they never will, maybe nobody's ever will again, it's just because I think you have to be Mozart these days to it's just so difficult, man, unbelievable. Joe Zawinul usually comes up with 1 or 2 tunes on his records where I always go, wow, what a great piece of music, because he's a genius. But I'm not, so I have a lot of trouble. It's hard, man. Yeah.
Astor Piazzolla?
What's that?
Astor Piazzolla. Do you know?
Oh, the tango guy. Oh, yeah, man. Great music. Yeah, I love that stuff. I have two records. Yeah, I'm sure he has millions, but I only have 2. Yeah, that's the cool shit, man. I love that stuff. What's that? Oh, Fusowski. Dave. Yeah. Screaming Headless Torsos. Oh, yeah, he's cool, man. Yeah, I like him. He's a friend of mine. Yeah. I like him. There's so many great players out there, especially in New York, Bill Frisell is great. Kurt Rosenwinkel is really great. He's my favorite. I mean, Kurt is a great player. We did a gig together in Holland, and he's an amazing guitar
Short
player.
melodies when he plays, like Wayne Shorter.
Yeah, he's excellent, man. He's a great guitarist. Wayne Krantz is really good. Ben Monder is really good. Steve Cardenas. There's a lot of really good players in New York. And most of these guys I know, and I get to play with them sometimes when they come to L.A. I'll book a gig just playing standards with these guys. They're great musicians.
Wayne Krantz is very original.
Yeah, I think Wayne Krantz is a very original player. He's got a lot of great ideas. Great player. Really good.
So you like...
Okay, man.
I suppose you like Wes Montgomery.
Sure, yeah. He wasn't like a big influence on me because I was too young. When I was that age, I was listening to rock guitar players, and so jazz guitar playing isn't where my roots are. My roots are in rock guitar. And when I started listening to jazz, I started listening more to saxophone players than guitar players, I guess. Mm-hmm. So, but I learned about Wes in GIT in school, and then I started listening to his records a lot, and then I started to realize, wow, Wes and George Benson I kind of started listening to them later. I didn't know about them when I was young. Like Pat Metheny, who listened to Wes Montgomery from when he was 5 years old. I don't think I even heard Wes Montgomery until I was like 25 or 26. And I'd already been playing for like 10 years.
Grant Green is another.
Yeah, all these guys, I learned about them way later in my career and realized how great these guys were. Even the blues guys, I never even learned about guys like Albert King and Albert Collins until later in my career, because my roots are with Jimmy Page and Jeff Beck and Jimi Hendrix. Those are the guys that I really learned how to play guitar. That's where my roots are.
They take things from the blues player.
Yeah.
Traditional blues player.
Sure, and then they change things. And well, guys, I got to go up and eat because I got to do a workshop in a little while. So is that okay? Was it okay? Yeah. All right, man. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
So,
It's for you.